additions, motions?
We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Okay, all in favor? Okay. All right, public comment. We don't have any public, okay. All right, any board member reports this week?
Well, welcome back to Ariel.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to have you back, and big old thanks to Ugly for holding down or doing a great job in Ariel's absence, because I know that was a lot coming in, taking all that on, especially with having just passed the bonds and all that new additional work. So thank you so much for the great job you've done. And I'm certain that Ariel appreciates having you here. You kept everything moving along.
You guys are a power team.
That's right.
If anything, this has shown us that it's a two-person workload. So we're happy to have the two positions. We're gonna be absolutely.
Nothing like having a teammate too.
Yes.
And doing something that's, the capacity expands so much, so
Yeah.
you guys are doing a great job, and it's obvious.
And do
There you go.
Yeah, the 18. Okay.
Bad to be bad.
Yeah, no better recommendations.
Okay. All right, farmland preservation report.
Yes, so as we mentioned, we heard back 2 weeks or a week and a half ago from the state grant agency that our 3 applications from last year were all approved. So the Rogers Family Farm, which is about 155 acres, and then the David Rogers Tract, which is 22 acres, both were approved. And then Scott Fisher's farm on Sardis Road, that's I think 70 acres, that was also approved. So all in all, it's about $984,000 of funding that was awarded. So we can start on these projects soon, just good news. And then the transaction costs for the 3 projects that will be taken to the grant this fall, or applying for grant funds this fall, and then the donation easement projects that we approved last month. We'll start on those the transaction costs were approved by the Board of Commissioners, so we can start on those grant applications this fall. And then we're also working with our land trust representatives and LCAB to bring forward bond projects that they're hoping to get funded for easement purchase. And so Michelle with Southern Ag will be presenting, she'll be requesting some bond funds for Lake Eden Preserve. They already approved transaction costs through LCAB. This will be some easement purchase.
So they have Lake Eden that they're seeking bond funds for. Is there
Yes.
anything else yet, or is that the only thing so far?
That's the only one so far. They're planning on, they have some that they're planning on bringing.
Okay.
But this is the one for now.
They're coming to LCAP far up.
Okay.
We gonna do that?
And then we're, something that's kind of long overdue, but I've been working on a plan to kind of revamp Farm Heritage Trail social media, and we've been pushing notifications with the Visit NC Farms app, but after Jess who's our previous admin left, she was doing a lot of the marketing and posting on social media. She was very good at it. And that kind of dropped the ball on that, and then got pushed to the back burner with everything else that came up. So we have plans to kind of start working on that process this fall. And then we're also planning for the next Ag Breakfast on November 14th. And we met with Wayne out on Claxton Farm last week, I think, and he and Dr. Claxton have been very generous to offer that space and waive the fee for our Ag Breakfast event. So really grateful for that. I'm happy that we can move a little bit there.
One volleyball, did that.
Yeah. Sweet. What time? I want to put this on my calendar because
I think it worked at 8:30, I believe. So 8, I would say. Okay.
Yeah, so of course, everyone is invited, and if you have others that you think would be interested in joining, let them know. And we have, I think we have a save the date and we'll be sending out a flyer soon, so I'll send those out to both boards as well. But something that's come up a lot is this idea of state or farm succession planning. As our farmers start to age and have kids that are interested or not interested and things like that. So we're hoping to maybe have some resources available in this topic. But we thought Stephen Bishop of Farm Link would be a good person to talk about the program and the services that they offer, just like as an introduction into this topic. So he's agreed to talk and he'll be our speaker at breakfast.
Should we hold up 8 to 10? Is that the typical time?
Yeah, I would, so the board has another decision to make.
Okay.
So typically our advisory board meeting, we hold it after the breakfast. But that's the 14th is the second Tuesday, and usually our board meetings are on the third Tuesday. So in the past, the board's voted to like move the meeting to be that day, if everyone wants to come to the ag breakfast and then just have it right afterwards. The other thing to consider is that the next week is Thanksgiving week, and so sometimes folks don't really want to meet Thanksgiving week. So it might be a good thing to move it to the 14th.
Where will the breakfast be?
At Claxon Farm in Weaverville. So that's a decision for you guys to make today, so, and then we can post that it's, you know, special location. And so if we do have the ag breakfast, I'm sorry, the board meeting afterwards, you want to take a little bit more time, but yeah.
Okay. You want to discuss, you have that on the agenda to discuss? or-
I do not have that on the agenda, but we can talk about that.
You want to just go ahead? Okay.
I can tell you for sure, I would not be able to do it on the 14th. That's like the busiest week of our whole year, harvesting.
Oh, yeah.
I won't even be able to come to the breakfast.
Would you be able to on the 21st?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What about the rest of you?
Flexible.
That's also, we're thinking of having Whitney Meadows, she's able to come, yes, to do the PUV. Whitney Meadows works in the tax department and she's planning on coming out to chat about the PUV program and the Christmas value program. So we're originally scheduled to do that
On the
on the
21st.
21st, which was our meeting date.
So if folks can do the 21st. And want it-
was coming for this.
Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah. So if folks want to keep it on the 21st, that we'd keep Whitney, you know, coming here to talk to you guys.
I'm fine.
So what are we gonna do? 21st?
Your
That's what we
option
need
is,
to decide.
do you want to do it on the 14th? And have it with the ag breakfast, or do you want to keep the existing meeting date on the 21st and have a PUV discussion? Here,
The recommendation, if we stay with the 21st and the PUV.
that works.
No change?
That
Okay.
works for me.
Works for me.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, and then just updates on our easement projects. Larson and Wesley, we're working on, our attorney Lynn is working on drafting the deeds. Most of the other documents are complete. We're working on the baseline documentation report. But other than that, we're hoping to close those in the next 2
Can you tell me how do the list of easement projects relate to the bond projects? In other words, which one of these,
None of these are lost.
none of these are involved in the bond?
Right, yeah, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, so these are projects we're working on, right? We're also starting the appraisal process for the 2 bond projects. Because once we have the appraisal, that'll give us the amount that we can then.
So we've submitted 2 farms to the bond project,
Yeah, we've got,
and they are not on this list.
no,
Okay,
because we still need the appraisal amount that will allow us to ask for easement purchase from the Board of Commissioners. And once that's approved, then we can start the other due
So
diligence.
Ed wasn't here when we did those. So he
I
just doesn't have-
missed the meeting.
Yeah, so maybe just
Yeah,
name the two projects and the acreage, so he'll, and where they're located, so he'll know something about them.
yes. So Deborah and Michael Nesbitt are siblings in Fairview off Cane Creek Road. They have about 155 acres, so that's one of the bond projects that was approved. And then Aileen Fortner and Joanne Parham are two sisters in Leicester off South Turkey Creek Road. That was about, their property's 30 acres. That was also approved for bond funds, and that was actually right next to the Rogers family farm that was approved by the grant, so it will kind of tag on to that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, and then, so Garrett Cove is also still on hold. We got an update from Southern App about the community farm expansion, the boundary dispute. Basically, the neighbors still doesn't seem to be cooperative about, he hasn't, his dispute is not based on an official survey. And it's not a legal dispute, it's just a verbal dispute. And so Southern App is at this point talking to them, basically saying, if they do want to make it a legal dispute, they have to get an official recorded survey. And either take them to court, or we could move forward. Because there's title insurance on the property, so if they were taken to court, it'd be pretty minimal risk. But that's something that county legal has to advise us on whether or not it's a risk worth taking and moving forward and closing the easement, or waiting to see if we can still resolve something. So we're talking to county legal to figure that out right now. And then, so Sluter easement, we recently have been looking through all the grant application guidelines within CDA. And that Sluter's been funded at 25%, but we're hoping to increase and get it funded at 50%. And so that's a cycle that's an application will be submitted this fall. The Ramsey easement is in the last stages of review. They're reviewing the deed and the title commitments, so we should hopefully be closing that one soon as well. The Jasper Wood Farm easements, we're starting deed work. The environmental assessment, appraisal and surveys are all complete. Splendor Valley, we're waiting on ISO Credit Union to complete the subordination agreement. Hopefully we'll hear in the next few weeks. Clark is checking with their loan officer on subordination for one of their loans, and then Worthen and Freckle are in the survey processes.
That's it. Remind me where the Clark one is.
Barnersville,
Okay.
not on Burns Creek.
Okay. It's next to
Next to Rashad and Burleson.
Okay.
What park is this? Where is that located?
Out in Barnesville.
Barnesville, okay.
Yeah, Martins Creek Road. Awesome. Well, I can jump into the next piece, the presentation. So since we have a handful of new board members, I know Mark isn't able to be here today, but we will go over this with him separately. But since we have some new board members, we figured we'd kind of do a review of just advisory board overview. We've got quite a few slides here, so let me know if I don't know, the info is too dense, so if you want me to keep moving faster.
And I'll send this out as well.
Yeah. We did this, I want to say you're gonna have to go with some of you guys and just research me, but I will, yeah. So basically, if you don't know, just a bit of history on soil and water. Soil and water district were formed in the 1930s as a result of the Dust Bowl. And just about 20 years later, Buckham Soil and Water was formed. So we've been around for quite a bit of time. It's just a general history on the program. So it all started in 1989 when we first adopted the first farmland preservation ordinance. We were the first in North Carolina to have a farmland preservation ordinance. So that's kind of exciting. In 2005, we closed our first conservation easement. And that was also the same time that the county started to budget funds for conservation easements. So we have these two boards, LCAB, the Land Conservation Advisory Board, was formed in 2024, is that right? And then Ag Advisory Board, so those are the two boards that are really holding funding conservation easements for the county. So we did our first farmland protection plan in 2007. My position was created in 2008. My predecessor, Marie Wise, held it for a while. And then we did the most recent ordinance update in 2016. We updated our carbon preservation plan in 2019, and then in 2020, we had the addition of Ubni's, 2021, addition of Ubni's position, as well as increased budgeting. So this is how the easement funding from the county has kind of progressed over the years, if you're curious. We have two different types of funding that the county has funded in the past: easement purchase and transaction costs. Really from 2005 to 2016, there was no budgeted amount, and requests were funded on a case-by-case situation, just requesting from the general fund. So that was typically about 60,000 per board, which allowed us to do about 2 projects a year. And then that really changed when the planning director decided to kind of incorporate about 120,000 into the planning department's budget, and that was just requested either from advisory or LCAB on a first come first served basis. So we were kind of competing for those funds, and it was like, we want to get those projects allocated, before the other boards, so that you would, be able to get your stuff funded. And then that increased a little bit to 150,000, so that was 75,000 per board, still kind of allowed us to just do 2 projects a year. So a big change happened when it increased to 240, split between the 2 boards. So every time we get this increase, we're able to do more projects. And then when we had significant commissioner support in 2021, and our land conservation was tied to the strategic plan, we were able to jump to that 750 between the 2 boards. And that's also where we were able to get Ubni's position. And so we've held that 750 being coming from the the budget. And then in 2022, the bond was approved in November, and now we have access to that open space bond. So it's not, that's a $30 million bond. It's divided in 3 buckets. So it's not exact the amount that's going to easements, publicly. That's not really been presented, but go ahead.
Could it be, this might be a good slide to talk about how in general our funding from the budget, the county's budget, is used for transaction costs. And then we apply for easement purchase from the grants, the 2 grants, which are NCDA and USD.
I think one thing is missing that has been extremely important to use of the monies. The important thing was the funding of a position in the Soil and Water Conservation Office for someone to provide this board administrative support. That's your position.
Yeah.
And subsequently, an additional position to provide the board support, because without your position and your position, none of this would get done.
Absolutely.
Because this is a voluntary board. So to me, one of the most important things was the funding of 2 positions to provide support for farmland preservation.
Absolutely.
You have it, where is that?
It's on the timeline, but I didn't put the amount of funding that our positions, so 2008 was when my position was created, and then 2021 was when Ubni's position was created.
Without the money for your 2 positions, none of this work would get done.
Yeah.
This list wouldn't exist.
Absolutely.
Okay?
When did-
That's why it needs to be recognized.
When did the board start? Was that in '89?
Yes, that was
Okay.
89. So with the
And
creation of,
there was no one like this.
Right,
I-
until 2005.
No one like this. It
yes,
was just us meeting, talking about what we would like to do. We couldn't do anything. But what we could do was very, very limited.
Sure.
so it was mostly.
If you look at,
ag district stuff.
if you look at her presentation, we didn't do but 1 or 2 conservation easements in 4 or 5 years
Mhm. Yeah,
as a volunteer group. Because we were unable to carry forward anything
Yeah.
from month to month. And John Ager and myself and Gary, the Soil and Water Conservation Director, pushed that into a budget year, and I forgot what it was to get a position. But that was the key to everything.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's the key to growing the position and,
And
I
since,
mean, sorry,
and since that time, the climate for investing, the county investing in green space has changed tremendously, the attitude in general.
absolutely. So with the ordinance, 1989, it created the Ag Advisory Board and it allowed us to have the voluntary ag district, the enhanced voluntary ag district. And the easement program, and also put out kind of the general ranking criteria. So what the ordinance states is that the purpose of the board is to promote agricultural values and the general welfare of Buncombe County. To encourage economic and financial health of ag, forestry and horticulture, increase public awareness of all of that in the county. The board is seen as having an agricultural voice in the county, so the hope is that because board members represent certain areas, folks in your area could, reach out to you and, tell you their concerns and you could voice them as the board. And it's also directing the focus of the strategic plan. So this shows basically our board member requirements. So the board is composed of 9 members. A minimum has to be 5 members actively engaged in farming. And they're all appointed by the county commissioners. We set a requirement that we have at least 1 representative per region. We've divided the county into 4 regions. This kind of shows you the general region, that each township is divided. And so this shows you all our board members and what region or community that they represent. So we're well represented, and most, I think, I was trying to think if most are, involved in agriculture in some way. Maybe all. So the program in general, the way it's housed within Buncombe County is it's housed within the Ag and Land Resources Department. And in that department is Buncombe Soil and Water and Cooperative Extension. So we live within soil and water side of it, and 2 full-time positions devoted to the program, basically, in charge of these handful of things. So just a bit of a background on conservation easements. Conservation easement is a written agreement between the landowner and a conservation organization. So that conservation organization could be a soil and water district or a land trust. Those are the 2 that are allowed to hold easements in North Carolina. So landowner agrees to keep the land available for ag or forestry or strict subdivision and or any other use that's not related to ag or forestry. And our responsibility as an organization is to monitor annually in perpetuity to ensure that the deed is upheld. So the 2 types of easements that we hold and work on in our programs, we work on full donation easements. This is where the landowner donates their development rights completely at 100%. And in some cases receives higher tax benefits for that donation because they're not receiving compensation. We, as the county, we pay for those transaction costs in order, that are needed to close the easement. And like I mentioned, it's 100% donation of the easement value. And then we have, well, I guess we technically have 3 types of easements now because we have the bond, but grant funded easements are similar, I would say, to the bond funded easements. So it's a bargain sale easement purchase with grant funding. So bargain sale means, we're not compensating the landowner at 100%. We're compensating them at, I guess 50 to 75, sometimes lower, of that easement value. We apply for grant funding or bond funding, and we're able to provide a portion of those development rights. So the way we estimate what that easement value is we get a appraisal done. We take that fair market value, which is that full developable value, and we subtract that restricted value or that agricultural forestry value. And so the difference in those 2 numbers is how we get that easement value. And typically we are compensating 50%-ish of that easement value to the landowner. So in those situations, if it's compensated at 50%, that landowner is donating 50% of that value as well. So they're still eligible for those federal income tax deductions. So because we talk about where all these projects are in, in their stage, we wanted to make sure that we kind of showed you beginning to end of an easement project, so you understand the complexity of the process, and that, if we say, oh, we're getting title work review, then you would be able to be, know, oh wow, that's the very end. We are in the home stretch now, rather than, oh, we just met with the landowner the first time. So anyway, where it starts, it's typically a landowner contacts us. They ask questions about the process, they show interest. We email or mail them an informational packet with an application. We schedule, a farm visit, and the landowner submits a completed application. We prepare maps, we rank the application, we put it on a waiting list. We kind of give the landowner a general idea of where they're at on the waiting list, and like how that equates to time. If they're midway on the waiting list, it might be a few years before we can get to you, that kind of thing. And then once we are close to them on the waiting list and the landowner is ready to move forward, we start this Ag Advisory Board approval process. So we need at least 2 board members to visit the farm with the landowner. This is to, put eyes on the ground, make sure it is what, it's claiming to be, and to meet the landowner. I know this is probably pretty fresh to all of you guys because you just went through it, but we present the project to the board. The landowners that visit the board meeting to continue that talk to make sure that all objectives are in the right place. And board votes on the easement, we request transaction costs, and then we get the landowners to sign a letter of intent before we start spending any county money. So the next step basically in the process is if the project is a donation, we skip this funding step. If it's looking for grant or bond funds, we start the funding step. And so we make sure we have a written agreement that the landowner wants to proceed. We don't want to waste time on a project that's not gonna, that's not ready to move forward. We get a pre-appraisal to estimate the grant amount. We start gathering all kinds of information for the grant applications. This is really what LB and I are starting on right now in the beginning of grant season. So we're getting farmland management plans, we're getting conservation plans, if they're eligible for the Century Farm status, we're helping them apply, we're getting them in that, we're making all kinds of maps and written descriptions. So then we're able to submit the state or the federal grant applications, and typically they have a December deadline. So we get all that in, we submit it, and then we kind of wait for them to do their review process, and then they come and usually want to visit those farms in the spring. And then once they've visited the farms, they get their own advisory boards to review and approve the applications. And then we typically hear that following summer if there's any funding. Once we hear there's funding, on the county side of things, we sign a contract to kind of like secure that funding with the grant. The landowner isn't signing anything at this point, but we're holding those funds for them. After we have funding, we start the due diligence process. So that is, typically we start with a survey. And then the environmental assessment, the appraisal kind of happen at the same time. And this is really where we're out on the farm with the landowner. We are helping them determine, locations of farmstead areas, really exact locations and house sites. And yeah, so the surveyors are then surveying the boundary and then all the interiors to make sure we have all that listed on the survey. Then we do the baseline documentation report, which is basically a snapshot in time of what the land looked like when we protected it. So that's lots of pictures and maps and written descriptions of the existing conditions on the property. And then we work with our attorney to do a lot of the legal work, title work, deeds, exhibits. And then we finally get close to the exciting end step of the closing. So the scheduled closing with all the people involved, we complete all the documents, get the survey recorded, and then at the closing, the landowner reviews the baseline, signs it, and then reviews all the legal documents, the deed exhibits, and then we get that recorded. Once that has happened, it's officially protected, and then at that point, the surveyor can go back out and mark the boundary with the easement signs, and this is what our easement boundary sign looks like. We want it to be yellow so you can see it, and it's usually posted as someone to be entering the property, so along the boundary facing out. And then if the landowner wants federal income tax deductions, they can contact us and we would sign those forms for them. Okay, so that's the general steps. So a lot of folks are like, okay, you talk about transaction costs all the time. How much do these actually cost? Like what's involved in them? So wanted to give you kind of a list of the transaction costs that we that we hire out or budget for, and the general cost of each. So it's mostly just for your curiosity.
And you're gonna send all this out to us as well. This is great information. Thank you.
Good. And this today is correct. In a year, prices go up or down or whatever, so it's just a bit of a ballpark. Then we have a whole other program, Voluntary Ag District, that is a statewide program that we administer, every county administers locally. And its purpose is really to encourage preservation and public awareness about agriculture in North Carolina. There's some general requirements, either property needs to be at present use value or it needs to be participating in agriculture as defined in general statute. In addition to that, the farm has to have a highly erodible land determination by the USDA. So even if they're eligible, it's an eligible farm and they aren't with USDA, we have to send them to the Farm Service Agency to create USDA records before they can be eligible. And then the landowner agrees to do no non-farm development on the property for a period of 10 years. It's all
Is that EBAD though?
so this is bad, but so this can be revoked at any time.
Oh, okay.
So it's non-binding technically, but they still sign that 10-year agreement, but it can be removed. All they have to do is let us know they want to be removed. General public awareness benefits. The way we create public awareness for BAD is that we have these cool green signs that all participants can have. We also map all the parcels on the county GIS website, as well as posting physical maps. And there are some nuisance suit protections, should somebody purchase land close to a farm It would be considered public awareness or public knowledge that that is a farm, so there could be potentially noise, odor, dust, slow moving vehicles, moving cows, that kind of thing involved in ag. So that's considered, you knew when you bought the property kind of thing. And now for EVAD is what we call, that is like our entry level program. EVAD is like one step up. It's a 10-year binding commitment. It's the same agreement, to do no non-farm development. Very similar eligibility. We have one increased, I guess, benefit is that if the property or the landowner is interested in doing cost share, they get a 90% cost share rate with the ag cost share programs that we administer at Soil and Water. So that's a huge incentive if there's a farmer that's wanting to put in a bunch of conservation practices on their farm. We try to work with Anthony at our office, get the land in EVAD, so they can get that rate. So here's a glance at our current program numbers. I'm sure you're curious. So total closed conservation easements that we have in the farmland preservation program is 30 farms. We have 30 farms protected. That's about 2,000 acres. We have so 30 farms, but then we have 22 projects in the works. So that's almost as much as we've done so far. So we've really been able to grow significantly over the last few years with 22 projects in the works. Hopefully we'll have a handful of those closing within the next year. The easement waiting list, we have 45 farms at like about 3,600 acres. EVAD, 21 farms, 2,200 acres, and VAD is 319 farms at like 22,500-ish acres. So that's a lot of the county. I mean, yes, most of the conserved farms are also in VAD, and like a lot of the conserved farms are in EVAD too, but you can't be in VAD and EVAD, just to be clear. You're either one or the other, but anyway.
Quick question on the
Yes.
EVAD, and just thinking about some farms that may be interested to do conservation. Are there any of those EVAD farms that their 10 years is getting close to that we should talk with and see, now that they've done that, that maybe they'd be interested to kind of take that to the next level?
It's a good question. So when we were getting close to the renewal time, we do reach out to the farms. And I'm not sure, but yeah, I think that's a good plan of action is as we get close on an EVAD farm to reach out and see. A lot of them are already protected in easement and want the 90%, so that's why they joined EVAD, but still, you should definitely do that. Alrighty, one other thing that we kind of oversee is the Friends of Ag events. So the idea is, we mentioned earlier, the idea is we're gathering the ag community, giving them a time to be all together in one room, so they're networking. We're also providing legislative updates or new opportunities and that kind of thing with the speakers. So yeah, that's one piece. We used to do it just as a breakfast. In 2020, we sent out a survey to see what do people want to see? Do they want it always as a breakfast? Do you want us to be flexible, do it at lunch sometimes, do it at breakfast? So it sounded like they wanted some more flexibility. So we're gonna do different times in the day so different folks can attend. As someone with kids, the morning's kind of hard, with drop off. So I think maybe we can get some younger farmers if we do something in the evening or at lunch. So anyway, we are kind of revamping that a bit, doing it at different times of the day as well as different places in the community, because we used to have it at the Ag Center. Nobody wants to try the Ag Center usually. So having it out in the community, we did it in Weaverville. We're doing it again in Weaverville, but the next time maybe we'll do it at a different. So.
Oh, this next one will be a different place.
Different place.
It's at the farm.
The other piece is that maybe we can get out on more farms and get people, on farm talking about stuff. like we mentioned about Farm Heritage Trail, this is something that we started 2016. Continuing to slowly expand it and have, dreams of in the future doing it countywide, but right now it's just in the northwest of Buncombe County. And passing by all of our conserved farms and farm stops in that region. We try to keep the calendar updated with events as well. We also oversee the Visit NC Farms app for Buncombe County, so this is similar idea to the Farm Heritage Trail where we're getting people out on farms, really promoting agritourism as a way for farms to, have another income stream, and to connect locals and tourists with the farm, with the local food, and kind of trying to close the loops and provide opportunities for folks that are interested.
What year did we start doing that? Was it 2020?
2020 or 2021, yeah. It was, it was 2021, something was our intern for the app. Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, 2021. And we did a farmland protection plan update. I know, kind of briefly mentioned this. The county funded this update, and it was we have a handful of recommendations from the plan that allowed us to really hope. Well, it provided some direction for the strategic plan when we created that strategic plan goal to preserve farmland and environmentally sensitive tracts. The recommendations allowed us to have these steps to move forward with. So here are the steps, the plan recommendations from that updated plan. So we've done a lot of these actually since 2020, so that's exciting, especially the continued county level funding for transaction costs of lease and purchase. And then, what Abby mentioned about the topic at the Ag Breakfast is kind of where we're trying to figure out, that next step of educational outreach for helping farmland succession planning. Like Abby and I last fall became farmland succession coordinators at a training, which there's only like a handful in the nation. So we're trying to help that piece.
Was that a federal training or NCDA?
It was through extension, but it was through Wisconsin Extension.
Okay.
And it's through the Transition Network. In North America.
I think you're right.
Transition Network or something along those lines.
And Wisconsin just happens to have a training program there or something.
They're the ones, I guess, that kind of, you may know.
I don't know a lot about them. I think they just, kind of had a lead role in that farm transition network. And that's one of their products was kind of putting that resource together where they're training people on how to guide farmers through that process. And we did something similar on a grant project statewide about the time, I guess, Maria and Melinda came on there about 2008, but Andrew Brandon with NC State was, at that time he was on grant, he's with us now, but he did trainings throughout the state for, normally the agents would help organize it, and then he would, kind of be the lead speaker and get some other folks to talk about things to look at in farm transition. So this is, kind of, I think, building off some of those early efforts.
So I don't think I think North Carolina didn't have any coordinators until we had this training last fall, and Stephen Bishop is one with FarmLink, Jeff Laggett is one, and then the two of us. And then there's a handful of others still in the training, but within our county, that's really the, we have.
I think we got the most of any county.
Yeah, we did.
All right, well,
Yeah, exactly. But what we learned from that training, we learned a ton, but really that this succession planning, this transition planning is easements are a long process, but this planning is a long process too. And it's a lot of hand holding and, so while we have the training, I don't know if we have the staff capacity to take on a ton of handholding with all of these kinds of projects.
So if we can stop it, like if we're talking to landowners about easements, that's succession, farm succession is also.
Perfectly in that,
It's
yeah.
kind of what we found years ago, what the role we could, we had the capacity to play was more helping them identify those resource people that could
Yeah.
walk them through it, the attorneys that are, you work with that type of thing with, there's some of the land use planners. And really, like you said, the families and the arrangements they're making are the kind of the big things, because, you know, it's amazing, or maybe not amazing, how much families don't talk about that, and how much the goals are not the same. So it's, yeah, there's all kinds of issues there.
Yeah, and for us, like, the end goal might not always be an easement, like, even though that's something, or, you know, or we want to promote. If we're helping, you know, a family through this process, we have to let go of that part of our job and be like, oh, well, it might not actually be their best solution to do an easement, it might be something else.
Yeah.
So anyway, lots of good info there, but yeah, so these are the plan recommendations. I mentioned the strategic plan back in 2020, the commissioners passed a 5-year strategic plan, and we were lucky enough to have a significant goal in that plan, and that really helped us be able to advocate for Upnea's position and increase funding and all of that kind of stuff. So this is the official language of the strategic. Then we also last year worked with the environmental subcommittee of the commissioners to create this goal around land conservation. And so the commissioner's goal is that the Buncombe County will help conserve or initiate the conservation of 20% of the county's total acres by 2030. So this really came about with Biden's 30 by 2030 goal. We felt like 30% was absolutely not feasible, but 20% was possible with increased funding and focus on the goal. So this is a map that is illustrating the county conservation focus areas. Upnea did her master's capstone creating creating this map through amazing GIS analysis. And so in the dark blue are basically the areas of our conservation focus. And then the yellow that you're seeing is the existing protected lands. So there's a lot to this map, and I want you to make sure you have a copy. And so within our existing ranking, we give some extra points if you're within one of these regions. And as well as, does LCAP do that? I don't think so. Yeah. And then last but not least, we have the open space bond that was passed in November of last year. So I don't know how much you know about it. I know we've talked about it a lot, but just so you know, that open space bond is 30 million divided amongst 3 buckets of projects. That's conservation lands, what we do here, greenways, and passive recreation lands. And so this is kind of the boards that are overseeing those projects. So we have Ag Advisory Board and LCAP on here overseeing those proposals. So we worked to put together a flow chart to illustrate the way our easement funding works. I know you can't see this, it's mostly just to show you the complexity of it, that we go through the project approval processes and we rank the projects, we explore all funding options, all grant options, private funds, well, we're not private funds, but LCAP is. And then like pretty much last option is, if we haven't been able to find funding elsewhere, we go towards the bond. So this is the Ag Advisory Board project evaluation system that is used for the bond. We do a general land evaluation where we're taking into account farmland soils, forest land soils, and then we're looking site specific on the different types of clustering potential. Is it what's the size of the property? Is it close to other protected lands? Is it close to, is it in the voluntary ag district? And, those variety of pieces. And then we also evaluate the different types of funding, leveraged or donation amount leveraged. And then the last piece that allows bond funds to be requested is that at least 2 of the following conditions have to be met to be able to request bond funds. So is it within one of our designated regions? So we saw that map showing the different focus areas. Is the property close to other protected lands? Does it have, prime soils? Is it significant for environmental reasons or significant importance? Is it an active working farm or century farm? Is it a significant size? And is it time sensitive? So really just have to meet at least 2 of these. We prefer it to meet more, but 2 to be eligible. So then if 2 of these are met, then the bond can fund up to 50% of the easement value after other funding sources have been explored. And another requirement is that the landowners donate at least 25 to 50% of their easement value. So we're wanting to make sure, we are compensating, enough for like a working farmer to be able to do an easement, but also making sure, they're still giving up some of their easement value. So just to be clear on how the 2 different boards fund bond projects. Ag Advisory Board, you guys are just funding our county land farmland preservation program projects. LCAB is funding all the nonprofit land projects. And those have a variety of different focus areas, wildlands, view sheds, farmland, stream riparian, that type of thing. So you will only see our projects coming to the bond. You won't, see others. And then in case someone asks you, how do you apply for bond funding? Or if they're interested, because there's been good press around it, tell them to contact us. Or if they're not interested in working with a government entity, one of the nonprofit interests. And these are the 3 that we work with. Oh, well, yeah. All right, that was a lot of info. And we will send it out to you because if you, want to see it again, you can look back at it. But do you have any questions?
My only comment is that once all this funding for conservation easements, the bond issue, for example, are finished, I think this board should consider very carefully, again, the alternative sources of funding for conservation easements that were outlined in the project which defined, the future of farmland conservation, because there were many examples of different ways that other boards in the state of North Carolina are funding their conservation easements, something that's continuing, not just one shot like 30 million this year and no more for 10 years. What we need to do is look at the alternative sources of funding and work on developing a continuing source of cash for this board to use.
So Ed,
So that's, don't forget, that's a good long-range project.
and Ed, just to keep in mind, if you look at other counties across the state, I say we have the most robust because we have 750,000 in our general fund and the rest.
We are dependent upon an annual allocation or a bond issue.
Well, our hope is that we keep the 750.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because it has
it's in the general, yeah.
So that it,
And,
even like, and,
and the
once we get past bond funding
And
time.
the second thing to consider, which has been discussed many, many times in the past, is some counties in North Carolina, 2, I believe, would be some, have created a county revolving fund to support loans to young farmers, young people who want to go into farming and simply can't afford to buy the land without access to inexpensive loans. And they have created a county revolving fund
Which counties?
to support that effort.
Which counties?
Chatham County, the one north of Raleigh. I believe the second county,
Is putting money.
the second county would be the Wilmington County,
New Hanover.
what is Wilmington?
New
It's New
Hanover.
Hanover.
New Hanover, I think it's the second one. They created a significantly large revolving fund that's used for one thing,
Interesting.
preservation of farmland.
But is it,
Anyway,
is it for preservation of property or is it-
those two subjects are something the board shouldn't forget.
Yeah. But it's for making farmland more for to new farmland.
I don't know, we'll have to look it up and see. I hadn't heard of either of those. Yeah.
Feel like somebody like farm credit or some, somebody who's already doing loans. But yeah, we always want to make it more affordable for sure.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Well, our Steve Chair's return, but I think, given the very agenda, I think I'll just take the liberty to carry on here with,
Yes.
calls for announcements and discussion. And I'm on the to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?